Thank you for coming. The first thing I'm going to do as a member of Congress is to be sworn in. The second thing I'm going to do is to try to reclaim the vote that the District of Columbia won in the Committee of the Whole. So as the district's first action of the 115th Congress, we come united this morning as the District of Columbia, the mayor of the city, alongside me, to claim our right to vote on the House floor in the Committee of the Whole as American citizens. I especially welcome Mayor Muriel Bowser. I recall that 2 years ago, her first press appearance was at this very press conference to present our city's determination to claim rights we have already earned. I also want to give very special recognition to our third speaker today. He is very special to us, Eli Ross, who is the director of the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs. And when I introduce him, particularly at this press conference, I think you will know why I consider him a very special Washingtonian. I thank him for his service, and I appreciate his joining us this morning. Together, the three of us come this morning to ask Speaker Paul Ryan for House rules for the 115th Congress that permits the District of Columbia delegate once again to vote in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union, as it is formally called. A vote that has been upheld by two federal courts. We in the District of Columbia have always regarded this vote as a down payment on full voting rights for the 680,000 district residents who pay the highest federal taxes. Do understand this figure: the highest federal taxes per capita in the United States, but don't even have the vote we already won in the Committee of the Whole, much less the vote that those who pay fewer taxes have and will cast this very day. And that is not to mention that our residents have fought and died in every war fought by our country. Now, the legitimacy of the D.C. delegate vote is simply not in contention. In fact, the district has voted in the Committee of the Whole in 3 prior Congresses. I can think of nothing more American than pulling a vote Americans have won and earned. And if you think about it, that is virtually unheard of in our country. How did it happen? When I first came to Congress, I simply wrote a legal memorandum to the Speaker, who was then Tom Foley, requesting that the House rules permit the D.C. delegate to vote in the Committee of the Whole. And this is what I argued. I said that the Committee of the Whole was created by House rules. The delegate votes in committees created by House rules. It follows, therefore, that the delegate should be able to vote in the Committee of the Whole created by House rules. And the House, in its discretion, granted the District of Columbia, for the first time ever, the right to vote on the floor of the House of Representatives. What did House Republicans do? They sued. They went to the district court and lost. They went to the Court of Appeals, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. And the court held that the delegate vote is constitutional under Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. In Michelle versus Anderson, the Court of Appeals noted, and its reasoning is important here, that the long-standing practice of the House to allow delegates to vote in standing committees was not constitutionally distinct from what the House had granted the district on the House floor. After voting in the 103rd Congress, the district was again able to vote in the Committee of the Whole during the 110th Congress and the 111th Congress. During those Congresses, no one ever even claimed that the delegate vote had any adverse impact on the operations of the House. Yet the vote's importance to the residents of the District of Columbia who'd had no presence on the House floor cannot be overstated. Although we have made some gains in our quest to make D.C. more equal to the states, and ultimately, of course, the 51st state, the delegate vote in the Committee of the Whole should be understood what it is, completely unrelated to statehood or even to other rights in the House. It is a proven way simply to give presence, to give dignity to the residents whose taxes help fund the federal government and whose sons and daughters and brothers and sisters are, as I speak, overseas serving their country. Budget autonomy and statehood are for another day, and we will not give up until we get the full deal. Today, though, we have a right to claim the minimum of what has been bought and paid for in lives given, in the nation's wars, and in taxes paid to support the government of the United States. It is time that our country return the favor to at least give the American citizens who live in the District of Columbia the dignity of a vote in the Committee of the Whole that they have earned and that has long been recognized by the courts. It's a very special pleasure for me to now introduce the mayor of the city, Mayor Muriel Bowser. As you know, Mayor Bowser, for particularly the last 2 years, has led a new fight for statehood with new illumination on it and new recognition. So it's a very special pleasure to have her with us this morning to claim the rights we already have. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and I am pleased to be here with my Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton and congratulate her on serving the residents of the District of Columbia very ably and on her swearing in this afternoon. I was with the Council of the District of Columbia yesterday, where we also celebrated a swearing in ceremony, and I then reminded them, as I was reminded at the swearing in of the Congressional Black Caucus this morning, the oath that we in elected office take to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the values that we all hold dear. And there is no more special value than each person who participates, pays taxes, being represented in the capital of their nation. And that is why we are here. We are here because our Congresswoman is, her intellect is, I would say, unmatched up here, but that may not be that nice to say, but she is brilliant. And when she came to the Congress, she said, I am going to attack the problem of our lack of statehood on every front, at every turn, and every chance I get. In her pursuit of the vote in the Committee on the Whole, the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union. I don't think I've heard the full name of the committee before, but it's a perfect one. And she made the legal argument. That argument was sustained, and she achieved the vote in the Committee of the Whole. And so we know, not for legal reasons, not for operational reasons, that vote was stripped in succeeding Congresses. And so we are here today to speak up loudly and strongly, to say the least, the least that reasonable people can do right now is to make sure that our delegate has a vote in the committee of the whole. We, as I walked in the building, I remarked to Beverly and my staff that these halls are teeming with people. The excitement of a new Congress, people newly elected, people coming from their districts. And I am reminded of the work that we have to do with all the members of the Congress to make sure that they, and more importantly, their constituents, know that the residents of the District of Columbia are treated unequally. I am also pleased to be joined by my Director on Veterans Affairs for Washington, D.C., because it is a bitter pill. Not only that we pay more taxes than 22 states, that we have, and let me be specific, that we pay $26.4 billion in federal income taxes, and we lack the right to vote on how the Congress spends our money. We pay more than 22 states, and we're larger than 2 states. And more than that, we get less back than most states. So the idea that you pay taxes and you get some federal dollars coming back to your jurisdiction, we don't get as much back as most jurisdictions. And so that is what we're here to talk about. We're not begging. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for equal treatment. And this is one way to do it. We also know that so many brave men and women from Washington, D.C. serve our country. They go out across the world and risk their lives to protect our freedoms. Yet, we are the only democratic nation that doesn't allow the people in its capital to vote. And so that is what we are here to talk about today. This is one front, one aspect, one step at achieving equality for Washington, D.C. And it is one that has been thoughtfully argued and fought and achieved and sustained by Eleanor Holmes Norton. And we're calling on all reasonable people who can't come up with a legal argument against it, can't come up with an operational argument against it. So we're only left with one reason why the Congresswoman and the people of the District of Columbia would not have this vote in the Committee of the Whole. So we're going to keep working, making the argument, because we're right legally, operationally, and we know that we're right morally. So Congresswoman, I stand with you every step of the way, and we look forward to meeting the new members of this Congress, giving them a welcome on behalf of the Congresswoman and the District of Columbia, and continuing to press the argument on both sides of the aisle. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Let me tell you. I want to introduce this young man. First, I want to thank the mayor for coming and giving those thoughtful remarks today, because by being here, she makes the point we are making today. This is not my vote if I were to win it, or the vote I have exercised. This is District of Columbia's vote. So we come here as a city to ask for what our residents have earned. So all of us are equal, and of course all of us are entitled to a vote. But sometimes I think some of us are more equal than others, because we have a volunteer armed services. There's no draft, so we are protected only by those who step forward and say, me too. So we have asked the Director of the Office of Veterans Affairs, Eli S. Ross, to be with us this morning, because he is not only a resident of the District of Columbia, he has served our country without a vote. He was permanently stationed with the Marine Heavy Helicopter Squadron 362 that was located in Hawaii. He managed positions in flight operations and maintenance and quality assurance. He has served our country in Japan, in Malaysia, in the Philippines, in Korea, and Singapore, in Thailand, yes, and in Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He is emblematic of the men and women who have served our country through the ages. I'm very pleased to ask Mr. Ross if he would say a few words at this time.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I really appreciate those kind words. Thank you, Mayor Bowser. I appreciate all the efforts that you make on behalf of the district residents to enjoy the same rights and representation that other citizens of our great nation enjoy. Congresswoman Norton, thank you for inviting me to join you today and for all your decades of service for the residents of Washington, D.C. I'm honored to stand with you this morning as we call upon Congress to restore your vote in the Committee of the Whole. Mayor Bowser and Congresswoman Norton are correct. It should offend every American that in our nation's capital, 30,000 veterans who risked their lives and fought for our country are denied the right to vote and that they lack voting representation in Congress. I'm extremely proud to be one of those 30,000 veterans who are residents of the district and who have volunteered to defend the United States of America and those principles that we hold dear. Inherent in those principles is an expectation that in a representative democracy, your voice will be heard within the halls of government. Yet, as a resident of the district, I do not enjoy the rights that I swore an oath to defend. Washington, D.C. has a strong history of military service. Men and women from the district have served our nation faithfully and with honor. At this very moment, district residents are deployed around the globe in defense of our nation. It simply defies logic that these men and women are consciously denied the rights that they are asked to defend. This Congress can and this Congress should act to ensure that these residents, our service members, enjoy the same rights and their families when they return home. Thank you very much.
Now, we'd be glad to entertain any questions from the mayor or from Mr. Ross that you may have. Yes.
I have a question for you. You were saying yesterday that you're concerned with a Republican a majority here on the Hill and a Republican in the White House. What this means for the city. I've seen some stories talked about bills in the past that would do away with things like labor laws. I guess, is that possible now? What are your thoughts there?
At the same time that I think that I had a duty to alert residents that we were in perhaps at greater risk than we have been, I also told them of our experience, even with a Republican Senate and House last year. So it's not the first time we've had an all-Republican Congress, and yet we were able to defeat bills, 8 of them to wipe out our gun laws, for example, 16 to wipe out other kinds of laws by working closely with the Senate, and that was a Republican Senate. So we were trying at the same time in my remarks yesterday to be honest with residents that the risk is graver, but at the same time I alerted them that it wasn't the Democratic president who kept us from having our laws eliminated. It was the Senate, which was in Republican hands. Since I have been in the Congress, and I told you I voted in only 3 Congresses, 2-year Congresses, that means almost all of the time I've been in Congress, I've had Republicans in either the House or the Senate, and certainly very few times here in the House have Democrats been in control. Those are the few times I have been able to vote. But we have been able to find allies among Republicans, even here in the House and in the Senate, and we fully intend to find them this time. So we wanted to alert residents of the danger and to tell them this was no time for pessimism, because we certainly have seen that we've been able to work even with, and I gave, I suppose, the best example with Speaker Newt Gingrich, who everyone feared and yet perhaps was was the speaker under whom we accomplished more than any speaker since I've been in the House. So I ask people to be alert, because we may need you to come and help us, but at the same time, pessimism is not in order.
Mayor, can I ask you the same question? I mean, for example, last time, was it the senator from Utah or someplace was talking about locking you up because of marijuana laws? Are you concerned about the city's laws in the Congress and administration that are Republican?
Well, I certainly share the Congresswoman's thoughts that she shared with us yesterday, that we all have to be prepared, right? We prepare for the worst and we prepare for the best. And so what we have done is we're looking across all of our agencies to see what our particular vulnerabilities would be if an emboldened Congress, backed up by a president who we don't really know what he's going to support or not support, could do. So my job is to prepare the city and make sure that whatever happens, that we will be able to operate our city and protect our values. So our other job is to work with the members of Congress, and the Congresswoman has had this conversation with me many times, that she has worked with Republicans not only to protect our values, the things that are dear to us, but to advance other initiatives that have meant a great deal to the people of Washington, including TAG, including the First-Time Home Buyers Program, and then worked over the years to undo things that have been harmful to us. So there continue to be areas that are of concern to me, Sam, but we're assessing where we think we're vulnerable with the administration, and we are very focused on building relationships with new members, with existing members, and with leadership. And we go into this with the assumption that all members of Congress, and a little bit later, in a couple minutes, they're going to take an oath to do what's best for the people of the United States of America, and that means us too.
Delegate Norton, have you had any contact with Speaker Ryan outside of the letter you sent, and has he said whether or not he's amenable to giving you that vote in the Committee of the Whole?
Speaker Ryan actually voted for the House vote for the District of Columbia. So did the Vice President-elect. I have written him, reminding him of that. No, of course, I've not spoken with him yet about it. I do not know where he will come down. It would be easy enough, it seems to me, for him to simply reinforce what he had done before, especially since I'm asking for the vote for the District of Columbia.
Could you clarify that, Ms. Norton? You said they voted for what exactly?
He voted for, some of you may recall that we almost got full voting rights for the District of Columbia. We paired with Utah. Utah was happy to pair with us when they lost what they believed was their right, and I believe was their right as well. Their missionaries were out of the country. They weren't counted. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court and lost the extra seat, the new seat in Congress. They paired with us the full way. We got the bill through the House and the Senate. You would now have a full vote in the House of Representatives, except that the National Rifle Association attached a rider that in return would have eliminated all the district's gun laws. Had to give that up.
Congresswoman, who would you consider your strongest allies in the Republican leadership right now, or in the caucus?
I don't want to name names. The reason I don't want to name names, if you had asked me that when Speaker Gingrich became Speaker, I certainly would have not. I would have not have named Newt Gingrich. But I can tell you that Newt Gingrich. It was under Newt Gingrich that we got the bill that got the district out of insolvency, that took over state functions that no other city in the United States has. It was Newt Gingrich that helped us keep the government open when 5 times it was closed down. It was Newt Gingrich I went to help, and indeed did keep riders off of the district appropriation. So, I search, and I hope to find.
What are the next steps steps for the referendum process on the Hill. It's passed by 85, 86%, and I'd like to know what are the next steps.
Well, I know that the Congresswoman has been working with the council, has transmitted the bill, and will introduce the bill in the coming, that very early days of the Congress, and I will be with her when she introduces the new bill. It's important to note, and I want to thank you, Anise, and everybody who has worked with the statehood movement in the district, to note that we will be submitting a streamlined constitution that was approved by the council very recently, along with updated meets and bounds for our new state, and 85% support from the people of the District of Columbia. And I don't have to tell you, it's hard to get 85% of people agreeing to one thing, and to have that level of support and that increased support since the previous vote is pretty remarkable. So we feel that we have put the Congresswoman in the city in the best position to make the argument to this Congress.
What the district did was very important because it moved the ball. You can't continue to do the same thing every year. So what we were doing every year was, of course, putting the bill in. This initiative, led by the mayor, joined by the council, was very important because it showed that the district was moving forward on its own for its own statehood. You know, the mayor's comments don't mean that she thinks that the Republican House and Senate and the Republican president can't wait to give us statehood. But I have asked the district not to let that wonderful momentum go by and to chart out a year-long plan for what the next steps will be, because we certainly achieved momentum when 85% of the people of the District of Columbia said what they wanted. You don't want to say, okay, we're not going to do anything further now. So it's going to be up to the city, and I'm going to work closely with the mayor and with those who charted this movement to see what we can do to really make things happen. And I have suggested that perhaps the most underused vehicle at our disposal is social media, used in a coordinated way. Are there any more questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Eli.